Let me just add a little bit of context before we start. This letter was an attempted uh, clarification of my previous statement elsewhere that at the core of a lot of the current cycle of conflict is the clash between the private capital model versus the state capital model, and that initially the state capital model is likely to dominate because of its advantages. But then private capital is likely to win in the medium term, maybe then evolving into some form of state capital model through the lens of private enterprise. Um, and afterwards, perhaps there is further into the future some new form of both or neither that completely redefines what private um, property even means. We'll see how it goes. Maybe if we live that long. Beside the point. Anyway, onto the main video. So this was a letter. Well, letter. I should say a direct message. Reply to a direct message I received on Reddit. I edited out personal information, so yeah, I'm going to try to read this and make a video. We'll see how it goes. Um, so let's start. Oops, sorry for punctuation if it's bad, it's weird, or anything. Yeah, it will be better if I just start reading and, instead of babbling. Um, okay. It's 2:37 a.m., so somewhat sleepy rant incoming. Plus, I'm going to use some terms I made up myself or gave alternative definitions to existing ones. I'll try to define them as much as makes sense in the context of this topic, but if you don't have time for that sort of conversation, here's your heads up. There's certain trends in human slash life's technological culture. They're not laws in the same way Moore's law is not really a law, but if humanity's life in general is allowed to continue, as in doesn't get wiped out accidentally or maliciously, those trends are likely to continue, as some of them are tied to tried and tested survival mechanisms. Others are straight up conditions mandatory for continued survival. Basic way to describe them would be with enough time, if life continues, this is likely or even guaranteed to happen eventually. Like a somewhat less potent but also a bit more predictable version of a monkey with a typewriter that writes all of Shakespeare by randomly bashing on a keyboard over long enough time. One of such trends would be the growth of average living standards in the world. Again, not mandatory to happen, certainly not a law, certainly not equal from place to place, but somehow happening nonetheless. Another one of such trends is continuously growing consolidation of resources under the control of intelligent agents with ever higher degree of internal consensus. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's define some terms here. Intelligence is the ability to manipulate structure, to add or subtract, to create or destroy, yeah, to create or destroy. Let's put it this way. Intelligence is the ability to manipulate structure, to add or subtract. Um, it's a mathematical action. Um, it has nothing to do with, well, it has something to do with learning and all that stuff that you usually see in definitions for intelligence if you just look them up online. But I was when I formulated this, I was trying to um, find a more general definition that would be applicable to pretty much anything that has the capacity that may be described as intelligence. And some of the things, surprisingly, that usually aren't, uh, to which intelligence isn't usually ascribed to, um, except for some kind of spiritual and metaphysical practices and perceptions. Like in this definition, for example, um, a star would have intelligence, and the universe in general would have intelligence, in air quotes, both. Um, well, not necessarily in air quotes. I'm not going into that right now, but yeah, let's start with this. This is basically the beginning of all my logic. Take it or leave it, so to speak. So to speak. Um, I burped. Sorry. Never mind. Uh, where structure is any relationship between two or more memes, single arbitrary units of anything, particles, concepts, chairs. Um, yeah. So I think it's pretty self explanatory. Yeah, let's move on. Intelligent agents, agents capable of intelligence. Basically, anything you could call an agent. Yeah, it's also complicated. If I'm going to describe, define every single word, we'll be here for a while. I'm giving way more definitions already, and I haven't defined every single word myself to begin with. But like, let's say, uh, intelligent agents are agents capable of intelligence, as in the ability to manipulate structure, to add or to subtract. Internal consensus, this one is tricky. A system separated from the rest of the environment with at least one layer of generation loss. A cell has an internal consensus, for example, separated from the rest of the world with a cell membrane through which it communicates. Mind of a single human or a pack of animals are also examples of systems with internal consensus. Oh, this is difficult. All right, how do I describe it? Yeah, beyond what was already said, I probably won't. Yes, because that's a whole thesis. It's going to take a while if I try to describe it in any more depth. Now, the degree of internal consent. All right, let me try to add something, because the most interesting part of this definition is generation loss, right? And it's connected to the types of intelligence I mentioned earlier in this particular recording. By the way, is it recording? Yeah, it seems to be recording. Um, but like, there's I give it four types of intelligence, basically. For like, they're arbitrarily divided. They flow in and out of each other. But let's say there's nuclear chaos, is when I mentioned the stars and intelligence within stars, let's say the capacity of stars for intelligence, that's what I meant. It's basically natural law driven intelligence uh, that has the ability to create structures up to a certain level of complexity, and perhaps cannot by itself create structures of higher level of complexity without those structures uh, classifying a different type of intelligence. Where okay, so that's one natural um, nuclear chaos. This one type of intelligence. Then what was the natural intelligence, what I call natural intelligence. Well, initially I called it natural intelligence. Then I decided that the word egregor, well, first of all, I found the word egregor, discovered it. Yeah, I know a lot of people already know that word. Not in my case. It takes me a while to find things. I'm not all knowing. But yeah, the word egregor in this context, if I try to explain that type of intelligence right now, maybe I should first mention the third type of intelligence, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the intelligence with a higher degree of internal consensus. That's the next definition. God damn it. Sorry. Uh, uh, and natural intelligence is something created from the miscommunication between uh, two or more artificial intelligences, let's say, or between artificial intelligences and the nuclear chaos. Uh, that sort of, it's basically intelligence of miscommunication. Um, yeah, let me just. And the fourth type of intelligence is I basically just left a slot open because I don't know what it is, if it is if it's even a thing. Uh, I just want to keep a slot open for the future when I maybe smarter somehow, and or manage to find something interesting of that magnitude. Yeah. Now, next, this because is something I mentioned earlier. Degree of internal consensus is a metric that someone probably should quantify, but maybe for the moment it would suffice to suggest that, say, a molecule of a chemical compound in stable conditions has a higher degree of internal consensus compared to a pigeon, which in turn has a higher degree of internal consensus compared to a herd of large herbivores, which in its own turn may have a somewhat lower degree of internal consensus compared to a pack of really hungry wolves right before the kill. Degree of internal consensus. How do I even begin? Let's say this is why I went with a definition of internal consensus as a system separated from the rest of the environment with at least one layer of generation loss. Uh, that's the thing. You see, just notice this phenomenon. Okay, when you there's layers and upon layers of generation loss between the thought in your head and the instance of communication. So, mm, uh, um, and when you and there's the same amount of layers, number of layers between that instance of communication and comprehension on the other side, in the mind of another person. So if you think about it, well, it's again, it's all arbitrarily divided. It's a continuous process of loss of information, degradation of information. When an idea is formed in your head, in your mind, like a feeling, a, an, a thought, undefined, an instinct of sorts, then you're trying to explain that instinct to you, to yourself first, by first of all, you're capturing it out of the flow, let's say, because obviously your thought process is a continuum, not a segmented thing. Uh, Although maybe it is, but never mind. Uh, but let's say you're capturing that thought, you're holding on to it, you're trying to give it shape. In the process of giving the thought shape, perhaps you're losing some information and adding some information to it. Then you have to put that thought into words in your own head, more or less, sort of sketch it out in your head in linguistic terms. And after that, when you try to communicate that thought to other people, you have to either say it, and there's limitations on the way you are able to communicate your thoughts. So maybe you don't know the language very well. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't share definitions with the other person. Let's say, or you have your own kind of set of definitions that the other person doesn't understand necessarily. So yeah, there's that process. So the degree of internal consensus basically is a metric that defines how much of that miscommunication is happening within the system itself, within the what constitutes the intelligent agent communicating with the outside environment, let's say. Uh, um, and the lower that generation loss is within the system, the higher is internal consensus. Okay? So the lower the generation loss is within the system before the instance of communication, maybe that would be more appropriate, the higher is the degree of internal consensus within that system. Basically, a lossless system of information transfer has a very high, if not maximum possible degree of internal consensus. Like in digital devices, more or less, although there's probably some generation loss there also. Not probably, most likely. But someone who knows more about that stuff should comment on that. Whew. Also, that was a lot, but there's more coming. Also, I would like to define what group is. Group is a technological tool group of organisms, group of cells, group of intelligent agents is a technological tool to improve the odds of survival of an individual intelligent agent through force multiplication due to greater sum total of available intelligence with increased degree of internal consensus. Try saying that 10 times in a row. Um, what is this even? How do I? It's a technological tool to improve the odds of survival of an individual intelligent agent through force multiplication due to greater sum total of available intelligence with increased degree of internal consensus. So basically, um, one cow um, dies alone in the wilderness, it gets eaten by a tiger. A large herd of cows has a higher chance of uh, not allowing a tiger to eat any of them. Uh, yeah, the tiger's still gonna pounce on an animal that's too old or too frail to follow the herd, but more or less when the bovines are in a herd, they're relatively safe um, because the herd can gather around their forces. In this context, the resources would be their physical capability, also intelligence, an expression of intelligence, whatever they do, basically, um, or a tool of intelligence. Uh, the herd can protect itself. So that's the logic, basically. Uh, they bunch together. They consolidate their the capability of their bodies and which is intelligence is an expression of the entire physiology. It's not just the mind, uh, at least not in this definition. It's not restricted to the mind and mental capacity. It's the expression of the entire body. A person who is incredibly smart but paralyzed and cannot move um, has their intelligence, one way or another, deeply limited compared to a person who is fully physically capable and can actually do things with his or her hands in the outside world. So, yeah, uh, a whale, for example, can be incredibly intelligent, let's say, well, incredibly mentally capable. Uh, we don't know whether that's true or not, but let's imagine they are. But if they're magically, okay, maybe I shouldn't make that joke, but if they're magically transported into the atmosphere of some random planet, or they'll fare no better than a um, what do you call them? One sec. Than a flower pot with petunias. Uh, I totally ruined that joke, haven't I? Yeah, the point is, like, you have to have a certain physical ability to be able to express your mental capacity. Um, okay, and now survival and growth. In this context, priorities of life. Uh, I won't define survival and growth or life because that's too much. Yeah, I still agree that that would be too much. Uh, I have definitions of survival of life and death somewhere um, written down, but um, maybe I shouldn't bring them out. Well, never mind. Let me just find it. It shouldn't be too far away. Where was it? Where was it? Because I've been writing something else somewhere else also. It's all over the place, really. Another term. In this context, life could be described as a complex, persistent, mimetic state sustained or maintained by actions of intelligent agents, whether internal or external, or both, to the set of memes comprising it. Whether internal or external, or both, to the set of memes comprising it, while death is the process of dissolution of life due to natural forces, entropy. I don't have the confidence in this definition, but yeah, I put it on record anyway. Um, the tellus of life is to stand in opposition to death. I'm pretty certain of this one, though. So, within the human society, I'm so sorry, I'm getting to the point. So, within the human society, the tool of group has evolved into three, although also somewhat arbitrarily divided but fairly distinct, resource consolidating institutions, RCI, from here on. State or system, uh, number one, state or system, number two, religion or ideology more broadly, and number three, private enterprise. All the various configurations of society that I certainly can think of can be explained through interactions of these three RCI and their influence on each other. Say, the whelming influence of the state on religion and or private enterprise leads to authoritarianism. Influence of private enterprise on religion and or state leads to corruption. Overwhelming influence of religion or ideology leads to desecularization or theocratic, quasi-theocratic rule. Private capital is an expression of private enterprise in pretty much its purest form, only gamified through decentralized state-based RCI tools like currency, laws, borders, etc. The ones I could name off the top of my head at 4 a.m. Uh, right now, it's actually 5:29. Never mind. Yeah, it's still pretty early in the morning. I don't know why. I don't sleep at night. I sleep during the day. Sorry, it's just too much personal info. State capital in this context is an economic model where specifically private enterprise RCI is overwhelmingly dominated by the state RCI. Therefore, cost benefit analysis is done not from the perspective of an individual with their private aspirations, limited lifespan, and relatively far more limited overall intellectual capacity, but from the perspective of the state slash systems aggregate intelligence. So, policies and strategies that may not necessarily make sense for a short to medium term profit driven individual to pursue become not only possible, but also highly desirable in the long term. Public transport infrastructure, postal service, socialized healthcare, free education, social housing, pensions and grants, state owned, high initial investment, energy infrastructure R&D projects, deliberately pursued global resource, technological or manufacturing monopolies. This was referring to, of course, Chinese rare earths monopoly. Uh, for example, cost efficient arms procurement, referring to you know what, space exploration, etc. As was space exploration, yeah, also, you know what that refers to. Under the state capital model, these policies may be supported by capital and the resources taken from elsewhere due to their capacity for force multiplication. wait, what? Under the state capital model, these policies may be supported by capital and the resources taken from elsewhere due to their capacity for force multiplication. So, uh, even if by themselves these policies and projects may not be profitable at all in the quantifiable monetary sense. So, like building a road fosters commerce between whichever points on the map are connected by that road. Well, it's not always true, but let's say if you put a um, build a road between a port on the at the seaside and uh, a town deeper into the country where, let's say, resources are located, mining operation, for example, or a um, farming operation, the town by the sea will be able to have access to food and materials via that road, more convenient access. Meanwhile, the deeper in-country operations also will benefit in terms of access to various goods and tools that can only be purchased from overseas or something. I don't know. Yeah, um, fairly simple sort of logic behind this also, I guess. I also want to point out that state capital model as an evolution of the group unlocks a lot of social policies that significantly improve the average odds of survival of the individuals under its dominion, at least in practice, including in the face of a large spectrum of potential environmental hazards ranging from wild animals to starvation to energy poverty to pandemics, wars, etc. Poverty, starvation, disease, tribalism, nations, war, death. These seven are seven plagues of humanity, as I listed them once somewhere. I think they're pretty good. They're a pretty good listing of what you would want to combat if your goal was to stand in opposition to death. Yeah, I'm not going to comment further on that. I guess directly converting into living standards as well as increased aggregate intelligence available to the group. Uh, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to comment on this further. Now I remember. Um, Let me read this again because I kind of messed that up. I also want to point out that state capital model as an evolution of the group unlocks a lot of social policies that significantly improve the average odds of survival of the individuals under its dominion, at least in principle, including in the face of a large spectrum of potential environmental hazards ranging from wild animals to starvation to energy poverty to pandemics, wars, etc. Poverty, starvation, disease, tribalism, nations, war, death, directly converting into living standards as well as increased aggregate intelligence available to the group. Basically fighting the all causes of death, at least in principle, is supposed to improve the intelligence available to individuals. And through that, increase the intelligence available to the group, the resource of the group. And through that, uh, also increase the chances of each and every individual in opposition to death. which is this model's current advantage over political systems such as oligarchies, where in turn private enterprise dominates over the state, and individual profit extraction is a greater priority compared to living standards of the larger population. This is the difference. An extractive model versus a contributive model, where your goal is short-term profit versus long-term benefit. Is like uh, drinking the water instead of increasing the amount of it. Fighting for resources instead of finding ways to increase the pool of available resources, basically. And maybe for a while that it seems like the party that is hoarding resources is winning, as in private enterprise, because for their own sake they are winning, but the pool of resources dwindles as they are being extracted without a care and a strategic thought, and eventually the whole system, well, hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but eventually the whole system collapses. The group collapses because the individuals understand that all other individuals from whom the resources are extracted understand that the participation in the group brings no benefit to them individually, and they just go, or they die because people need some amount of resources to survive. And if you just, well, not just people, all living beings, and if you just take those resources away from them and hoard them, or even just keep supplying yourself for your own benefit at the expense of everybody else, the group collapses eventually. It's just I'm gonna butcher this, but the it's one of the okay, no, I'm not going there. Yeah, capitalism has issues in its pure form. Private enterprise has issues in its pure form. No shit. Socialism also has its own set of issues. We'll get to that. Larger population. And now I feel like I have to explain the connection I see between intelligence and living standards, which, in my understanding, are the average of some arbitrary quantization of principal liberties formulated as such. To uphold these liberties for the sake of another, indiscriminate of their background, is to strive for the betterment of all. Freedom of life, freedom of death, freedom of mind, freedom of body, freedom of discourse, freedom of mobility, freedom of time. We carry our liberties upon our person in any domain. This is a sort of distillation of everything, basically, I believe in on a personal ethical level. I tried to make sort of formula that would work on its own, that would have minimal holes. There's probably some I just don't see, or some I failed to patch even while seeing them. For example, the word betterment is I can't define it. I tried to. It's not about definition. It's about which word would be more fitting there. It's betterment, benefit, or um, survival, or maybe survival would have been better for the survival of all, but I don't know. For now, I'll leave it. I'll leave it this way. Excuse me, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's a terrible mistake. Maybe nobody. Maybe it won't matter. These liberties are like range of motion, or liberties in a board game, Go, for example, that ultimately allow an individual to exercise their intelligence in more complex ways, increasing the aggregate intelligence available to any group. In animals, freedom of mobility, for example, could be expressed as the ability to move in the direction of light or motion, to escape a predator, to pursue a potential mate. For people, it's the ability to travel, obviously, potentially beyond the confines of one planet with a guaranteed but unspecified expiration date. Freedom of mind is the liberty to think deeply, have access to sources of information. Freedom of discourse is the liberty to challenge and be challenged, to cooperate and banter. Freedom of life is the freedom to choose how to apply and not to apply yourself in life, among other things, and so on. Another concept I'd like to mention, if I may, is the ladder of living standards. It's a succession of evolutionary, cultural, and technological advancements that improve the range of principal liberties. A ladder which we climb against a constant force of gravity. So, all these liberties apply to an individual. See, there's no reason for any individual to participate in a group unless the RCI group improves the individual's odds of survival. The whole process of climbing the ladder of living standards starts as a private enterprise by a single celled organism with internal consensus barely formed at the bottom of the tree of life. Yeah, now, question: what is private property really? A collection of tools that improve your intellectual capacity, starting with your body, your life often depending on those tools not being taken away from you. Important aspect of principal liberties at some inevitable stage, if their values continue to grow, is inalienability. I should have put some commas there. Stage, if the values, why their values continue to grow, is inalienability, a liberty value that can easily be. Let me try it again. Okay, reading is difficult, especially for me. Never mind. Now, question: what is private property really? A collection of tools that improve your intellectual capacity, starting with your body. Your life often depending on those tools not being taken away from you. Important aspect of principal liberties at some inevitable stage, is if their values continue to grow, is inalienability. A liberty value that you can easily be parted with is of a lower level, lower quality compared to the liberty value that is more difficult to take away. Whew, this is, if I were to try to explain this, it would take quite a bit. Um, just think of the difference between a person flying a what do you call them? Flying on a glider or an airplane versus a bird flying under its own power. Um, that's both cases are freedom of mobility, but obviously there's a huge difference between a person who has to use a tool external to their body to fly, versus an animal that has evolved the ability to fly into its body. Um, it's much more difficult to take away a bird's ability to fly um, in relation to its life than to take away a person's a pilot's ability to use their airplane. Um, just kind of don't give them fuel and he won't fly. Well, technically, you could argue that don't feed a bird and then it won't be able to fly. But yeah, um, I, we could talk about it for a while. There's your example. I'll move on. Mind, this is a remark. Mind, liberties are still not rights. I think that distinction is extremely important. Rights are positioned as an entitlement, whereas liberties are accommodated and sometimes even directly provided by other people, often for absolutely selfish reasons like freedom of life. We don't have rights, we have liberties accommodated by other people. The golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. Um, yeah, I think that's self explanatory. If it's not, just ask in the comments. Um, if there's going if there's gonna be any if there are going to be any comments in the first place, but like feel free. um there's like one comment under the whole video. I'll be happy to talk to you, man. Or not a man. um at some point, if living standards should continue to grow, which is one of the trends I mentioned at the very beginning of this massive night oil burning rant. I'm so sorry, it's 5:52 a.m. by the way. Good morning to you too. If living standards continue to grow, state capital model itself eventually becomes a restriction to the liberties available to an individual and to the private enterprise RCI. And this new round of confrontation would start not in the average, but at the top where resource consolidation is the highest under control of the intelligent agents with the highest degree of internal consensus, individuals or small groups of individuals with maximum amassed privately controlled intelligence, wealth, power available to them for the current level of technological advancement. Basically, hyper capitalism versus hyper state capitalism. Yeah, this becomes an issue when see this embodied AI and high level of general automation privately owned is a massive factor in the balance of power between the state capital and the private capital. Automation effectively is a new source of power separate from the general human population, which puts the whole matter of average living standards, social policies, value of human labor and life under question. Labor in this context is intelligence over time. Power is the ability to direct labor, consolidated labor. Yeah, this is also a big topic. Maybe I should add that you know how monarchies often claim that their power is derived from God, from divine mandate. Well, I can't agree with that. Maybe there's some argument towards that notion, but I can't agree with that because uh, by the end, at the end of the day, that power is derived from people believing that your mandate is derived from a divine source, which is basically the same as power derived from the people, from the general human population. But with the sort of advance of general automation, there is a possibility, a distinct possibility that uh, a new source of power, that general automation will function as a new source of power. It's still derived from technology created by the general population, but at some point it becomes self sufficient in that sense as well. Um, and yeah, it becomes its own thing. Sure, there's still communication, still connection between the two, historic connection between the two, most definitely, but it could be self sufficient. And by that logic, it becomes its own uh, source of power, source of consolidated labor over time. Yeah, applied over time. I don't have an answer to this question. I really do not have a solution to this. Um, how we stop being relevant in this context, how people will not be just thrown away. It's you know the classic fear of oh, AI will um, kill us all and wipe out humanity because we are irrelevant to it, um, or corporations will stop um, supporting people because they don't need people anymore. I don't have an answer to this question. I only suspect that it's ideological in nature as well as technological. Of course, all of this is technology. The group is a stick we clutch white knuckled in front of us to improve our odds in opposition to death. But there are holes in the foundation of our culture that need to be seen and recognized and filled in. Else, building on top of the weak point will eventually lead to a collapse of parts or the whole structure. And the structure is what supports the ladder of living standards upright in the first place. I wish I could put enough feeling into these words. I I can't. I'm not an actor. I can't dramatically narrate this letter. I tried. I I get tired. I lose focus. But I really cannot emphasize this enough. You know. Anyway, let me leave you with the last thing because I'm so tired. It's 6:44. Thank you if you read this far. So it's actually 5:55 right now, but AM. Yeah, still AM. Um, this wasn't written today. This was written a while ago. Well, maybe a week something, maybe a little bit under a week ago. So yeah, thank you for listening this far. If you managed to survive my diversions and eggs and mess and all that unpleasantness, I'm not very good at this. So, but anyway, let's do this one more time. Please read again the liberties I listed. To uphold these liberties for the sake of another, indiscriminate of their background, is to strive for the betterment of all. Freedom of life, freedom of death, freedom of mind, freedom of body, freedom of discourse, freedom of mobility, freedom of time. We carry our liberties upon our person in any domain, and just just think for a moment. what would be the qualities and capabilities of a person with these liberties pushed to their physical limit, not 100 years from now, not 1,000. Just continue to add zeros and think about it, if you will. The shift in perspective alone, I think, is worth it. I just there's another bit I probably should add to this. Let me just find it, if you may, if I may, um, just to sort of finish, round up the video. Um, where was it? Wisdom. In. Uh huh. So let's see. This one. Uh, so many things lose relevance when you try looking at life from the perspective of someone living far, far in the future. Not merely 100 years from now or 1,000, but 100,000, million, billion years into the future. Past the death of our planet, past the death of our sun. Don't just assume we would be long gone by then. And every time you add zeros in your mind, the thought rips you away from present reality and hopefully provides an opportunity for preventative hindsight, for re-evaluation of the mistakes you're making, and repeating while completely caught up in the moment, especially if you imagine for an instance or a minute that said someone may actually end up being you. It's like growing up, reminiscing upon your past self and wondering, why have you ever bothered with all the pointless childish nonsense you used to care so strongly about? What was the appeal? I couldn't possibly remember. And maybe a glimpse of this perspective is the essence of what we recognize as wisdom in our elders. The ability to look all the way back to the past through a lifetime of lived experience and give zero fucks.